Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. We're going to wait just a couple minutes to allow for some latecomers, and then we're going to start. I would ask that everyone, apart from our wonderful panelists, please mute your microphone and turn off your camera for the session. Thank you. Okay, we're just going to give it one more minute and then we will begin our conversation. So just so our registrants know, tonight our run of show essentially is going to be, I'm going to run through a series of questions with our panelists, and then we are reserving a few minutes at the end for some Q&A, and hopefully we'll get there. But I would ask if you have questions during the conversation, please just put them in the chat feature and we will get to them at the end. Okay, well, I think we should begin. Thanks to everyone for joining us tonight. I'm just going to introduce myself and then allow my panelists to introduce themselves. My name is Adriana Payne. I am a K through 12th grade educational advisor at Smart City Kids. I'm also the director of operations at the firm. I'm also the parent of a high schooler, so just completed this process, and a college student. So I can tell you, for families on our session tonight who have perhaps done a kindergarten process or a preschool, personally, I found middle and high school a lot more relaxed because it was all on the child. So that was sort of a joy as a parent. I just want to tell you a little bit. Our firm was founded by Roxana Reed about 20 years ago, and our objective is to guide families to right fit educational institutions for their child over the course of their development. We serve early childhood all the way through college. We have a boarding school practice, a special needs practice, and we work with families around the New York City area, but also around the globe. We also have a practice working with institutions like Memorial Sloan Kettering and NYU, and we do work for schools as well. I wanted to add that next week on Tuesday, the 24th, one of our advisors, who is a real expert in the boarding school space, is hosting our final panel of the spring season with 4 boarding schools: Choate Rosemary Hall, Lawrenceville, the Taft School, and Northfield Mount Hermon. So if any of our families tonight who are investigating high school are perhaps thinking of that, you may want to join the conversation because it should be a good one. As a reminder, once again, we will look to do some Q&A at the end, but please keep your microphones and cameras off. And at that, I'm going to ask the wonderful panel to introduce themselves. So why don't we start? I'm just going to go sort of in order of whom I see. So let's start with Kathy.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. My name is Kathy Pradier-Connick, and I am one of the Associate Directors of Admissions and Financial Aid at Spence. So Spence is located on the Upper East Side. We are a single gender school educating 750 or so girls in 3 divisions: lower, middle, and upper school. We'll focus on middle and upper tonight, and each of those divisions has about 250 students. We are, as I said, on the Upper East Side, between 2 different buildings. One purely academic, facility on 91st Street, and then a brand new state-of-the-art athletic and eco center just a few blocks away. Our entry points, we wanted to talk about those in our initial intro, are both in middle and upper school, a little bit smaller group entering in middle school, grades 6 and 7 across those two grades, anywhere between 15 to 20 students. And then into 9th grade, a larger cohort, on average 25 students coming into 9th grade. I would love to just read one part of our philosophy statement. You can certainly find the mission statement on our website. So it goes thusly: offering a rigorous liberal arts study, the Spence School develops high standards and character while creating an environment that fosters self-confidence and the joy of learning. Charging our students to meet the demands of academic excellence and responsible citizenship in a changing world, we teach that diverse points of view fuel inquiry, engagement, and deeper understandings of complex truths. We believe in the strength, intellect, and vitality of women. Thanks.
Thanks, Kathy. Okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go to the geographic other end of the city. Sheila, how about you take it next?
Hi, everyone. I'm Sheila Bogan. I'm the middle and upper school admission director at Packer Collegiate, which is in Brooklyn Heights. Definitely on the other side of most of my colleagues here. We are pre-K 3 through 12th grade school, about 1,070 students overall. All 5 boroughs, New Jersey, Long Island, represented. So we're pretty proud of that. It's definitely a geographic diverse place. We are probably one of the only places that does not offer transportation in terms of a bus, but that is mostly because literally most trains come within 2 blocks of Packer. So it's very convenient for everyone to get there. And it would probably take you way longer in a bus because of traffic. So we do not offer a bus. But I would say, you know, our kids are, you know, our entry points are sort of pre-K 3s, kindergarten, 5th grade-ish. 5th grade is when we start our middle school, but we really only have room for somewhere between 6 and 10 new students on any given year. And then 9th grade is kind of our next big entry point, which usually we're taking somewhere between 35 and 45 students for 9th grade. So our class increases in the high school, and you know, a solid 35 to 40% of the grade is new. So that's a nice mix for those kids. What else? You do not need a passport to get to Packer. Quite far from some of my colleagues here, but I promise you, easy commute. And just like I don't know, I think what makes Packer unique in its own way is just like there's just a vibe when you walk around this place that feels like kids are really engaging in serious work, but that they are not. There's not a ton of pressure on them from us anyway, to just be chasing after, you know, college from the second they start here. And so it's something I really appreciate. I just left our science research presentations, and we had an alum from 2016 speak, and she was one of my favorite kids who graduated that year, and she's presenting on her science research that she's doing now in med school. And I think I understood every 3rd word of what she said, but it was pretty compelling because everything she talked about literally went back to her program here at Packer, which was pretty special. So anyway, I will stop talking there, but thank you for being here.
Thanks, Sheila. Okay, I'm going to go to Judy next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Judy Calixto. I'm the director of middle school and high school admissions at Dalton. And let's see, Dalton is on the Upper East Side as well, close to the 456 and the Q, and easily accessible through Central Park if you want to walk over to the west side. We are a K through 12 school, gender inclusive, And we are a progressive school. So pedagogically, if you would like to read a little bit more about it, our probably what makes us unique is that we have something called the Dalton Plan, which was established by our founder. And you can read about her there. I think that the thing that really gets me about Dalton is the energy, the intellectual curiosity, the passion with a purpose. Students really are engaged, not just in the classrooms, but you can overhear conversations in the hallways. You can go to lunch, and on the lunch line, you will pick up, a podcast you absolutely have to listen to, or you must read this book. It is coming from students, from teachers, from everyone in the school. And there's a lot of innovative and creative energy there. So our entry points, just so you know, we have about 1,320 students total, K through 12. We take in about 95 students for kindergarten, about 8 to 10 for 6th grade, and about 25 for 9th grade. And Adriana, did you ask us to say something about a misconception?
Yeah, I mean, I love what I was saying before is I think especially in New York, where we have a lot of self-appointed experts on things like schools, that a lot of wrong information gets out there. So I would love to hear if there's a misconception or a myth you'd like to bust about your school.
I have to say that I live downtown, and I've lived downtown for forever. And I originally thought that Dalton was kind of like Gossip Girl and was going to be flashy and glitzy and all of that. And when I got here, I realized that Dalton was less uptown than downtown. And the girls don't have a nicer handbag than I do.
All right, good to know. Okay, I'm gonna have Carrie go, and then I've geographically grouped my hill schools together. So I'll have Carrie, then Jenna, Tyler, and Jason, and then we'll roll into the next.
Right, thanks so much. So across the park from Judy, I'm Carrie Salvatore. I'm the Director of Admission and Enrollment Management at Columbia Grammar and Preparatory School. We are located on the Upper West Side between 92nd and 94th Street, just steps from Central Park West. We have over 220,000 square feet of classroom space. We have over 7,000 square feet of outdoor space. And obviously right next door to hundreds upon hundreds of acres of Central Park, where we're really lucky. We are pre-kindergarten through grade 12 co-ed. Our main entry points are pre-K and kindergarten. Like Sheila and Packer, our middle school begins in 5th grade. So we will take some students in 5th grade. We grow more in 6th grade, where we'll probably take about 10 to 12 new students. And then 9th grade is our next big entry year, taking about 30 to 40 new students. The exciting thing for us at CGPS is while we're over 257 years old, pre-revolution, people always ask, is it traditional or is it progressive? I don't see those two things as being mutually exclusive. We're traditional, but not dust covered. So we want to make sure that what we are teaching is keeping up with the latest and greatest, yet we're not forgetting the basics just because something is brand new and shiny.
Thanks, Carrie.
Want me to jump in next? Is that good? Okay.
Thank
Hi,
you.
everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Jenna King. I'm the Associate Head of School for Admission and Enrollment at Riverdale. I oversee pre-K through 12th grade admissions, and I also help to run our advisor program and serve as a 9th grade advisor. I'm also the parent of 3 students at Riverdale, a 6th grader and 2 4th graders. And this is my 18th year at the school. We are a pre-K through 12th grade all-gender school in the Bronx, and you'll hear from my neighbors in just a few minutes. At Riverdale, I'll just quickly speak to the entry points and then talk to you a tiny bit about the school. We are just over 1,200 students, and what that looks like in terms of middle and upper school. We expand from about 60 students in our 5th grade to 6th grade being an entry point for us. We add about 20 to 25 new students. 7th grade is also an entry point for us, where we add about 10 new students. to expand to 95 students in the grade. And then we expand again in high school to get to about 135 to 140 students per grade. So adding typically around 40 to 45 new ninth graders. At Riverdale, we draw students from about 104 different zip codes, and we are really proud of the diverse community that we make up. And, you know, I was talking to a colleague the other day, and they described Riverdale as a playground for collective learning. And I thought that was such a good phrase to describe what the school is all about. We believe that our teachers and our students learn together. We really focus in our mission on curiosity, purpose, and belonging. And I would say one of the misconceptions about the school is that I think sometimes people think that you can't have a rigorous academic experience accompanied with a place that has a sense of humor and fun and also focuses on character development. And I think that's something that we really try to challenge here at Riverdale. I think we're a place that, as some of my colleagues were describing, is constantly re-examining itself and making choices about how to move forward and how to continue to be relevant for our students. And I love the fact that our students take their work seriously, but they don't take themselves too seriously. And I think that creates an environment where everybody feels safe and comfortable to take risks and to try out different identities and to experience different kinds of activities and learn about different interests. So that's a very quick overview. I hope that you'll have a chance to come and learn more specifically about Riverdale, and I'll turn it over to my neighbors.
Thanks, Jenna. All right, Tyler, you're up.
Thank you, Adriana, for having me. My colleagues, it's great to be with you tonight and great to be with you, our audience. So my name's Tyler Ferreira. I am the Director of Admissions for the Middle and Upper Divisions at the Ethical Culture Fieldston School. We are a school that's been around for quite some time, founded in 1872 by our founder, Felix Adler, who was a thinker, philosopher, educational reformist, also founded the Ethical Culture Society of New York. We are a school pre-K through 12th grade. We have a total student enrollment of about 1,700 students. We have two campuses. One of our lower divisions, Ethical Culture, is located on Central Park West in the 60s, Manhattan. And the main campus is up down the street from my friends Jenna and Jason in the Riverdale section of the Bronx in Fieldston. And that's where our Fieldston lower division, as well as Fieldston middle and Fieldston upper, are located. Our entry points for the middle and upper division are at 6th grade and at 9th grade. 6th grade, we typically enroll a new cohort of about 25 students. And in the 9th grade, we typically enroll new students, around 35 new students join us at that point. Our school in a nutshell, sort of what sets, I think what makes our school unique is that we are a school that was founded around the exploration, the study, and the practice of ethics. So young people in all divisions of our school are thinking about who they are in their communities, who they are in their families, who they are in this world, and how they can make choices that not only affect positive change for themselves, but also affects positive change for the people and the communities around them. That takes different forms, of course, at different age levels, but it's something central to every point and every part of our school's education. So at our school, in the same way, we have music and language and English and math departments and so on. We also have an ethics department. So kids are really engaged in conversations and coursework really around ethics, not only in those departments, but in the departments, all of the other academic departments as well. We are also a progressive school, which means for us that the way instruction unfolds in the classroom, the way teachers approach lessons is very much from a student inquiry-led approach, which means that students in our school, you'll see them around tables, their desks will be in circles, they'll be having conversations about material. They'll be asked to think about things that maybe they don't really know the answers to yet. They have to lean into sometimes some difficult and challenging conversations, consider different viewpoints, and then try to build their knowledge around that practice. So I'm happy to be with you all here tonight. I think we're all very lucky to live in a city where there's so many awesome, unique schools for you to get to learn about. And I'm happy to have this opportunity to be with you. So thanks.
Thanks, Tyler. Okay, Jason.
Sorry, getting over COVID. So sometimes the start of my conversation makes me sound like a 12-year-old boy. Jason Caldwell, I'm the Director of Admissions at the Horace Mann School in the Riverdale section of the Bronx. In addition to being the Director of Admissions, I'm also an alum. I actually started at Horace Mann in middle school. My brother's an alum. I have 2 daughters that attend the school. My oldest is in 6th grade. My youngest is in 1st grade. They both happen to start at kindergarten. Horace Mann is a nursery through 12 co-educational school. The main campus, or 2 of the main campuses, our lower division and then our middle and upper division are in the middle section, in the Riverdale section of the Bronx. Our nursery school is on East 90th Street, and we're blessed and privileged enough to have our own nature laboratory. The John Doerr Nature Laboratory, which is a 300-acre nature lab in the Washington Depot section of Connecticut. This enables our students to get away from the hustle and the bustle of city life to come together and have communal moments, teaching moments, opportunities to team build, to community build away from the city and in a residential program. In the 8th grade, that culminates in a 9-day outdoor bound-esque type program that is truly unique. I think about my own experience doing that, oh my goodness, 30 years ago, and how transformative that was for me because I had never gotten a chance to do that. Horace Mann is wonderful in terms of the opportunities and the resources that it gives the students. Just as an example, by the time you get to the high school at Horace Mann, students have access to 75 different clubs, 61 different athletic teams, boys, girls, co-ed, junior varsity, varsity, and 23 different publications and 2 different podcasts. Amongst my favorite things to do is I'm the advisor to one of our podcasts. So every Monday I get together with a group of students and we debate issues surrounding quote unquote nerd culture. And it is a lot of fun. The students did beat up on me for my takes on Dr. Strange. We'll get to that later. In any event, Horace Mann has 1,800 kids, nursery through 12. 46% of our students identify as students of color, and they come from about 153 different zip codes. We do offer transportation, but we're actually, for those parents, in terms of high schoolers, where their kid might take the bus, we're actually pretty close to the train. We're a quick walk up the hill from the train. The thing that I love most about Horace Mann is actually tied to, I guess, a misconception about the school, and I'll explain. I think that sometimes people think that academic rigor or academic excellence automatically means cold or maybe not personal. That's the furthest thing from the truth. I think that what people don't understand about Horace Mann is, first and foremost, we are a community. And that's something that I celebrate. And it kind of came together for me, I got a great example in the last 24 hours. Yesterday, I had an opportunity to go to the University of Pennsylvania graduation to support a young man that came through the school that pretty much became a family member of mine. And while I would love to say I was the only one that supported him, this school supported him. And it was wonderful to see his mom get to celebrate with him as they moved around so much while they were at Horace Mann. Another young man came back to visit after taking a year off, and he came to explain that he's about to go into service of this country, and he will be attending West Point next year because that's something that was important to him. And then I think about my daughter as she ran lines to prepare for her upcoming play in the Jangle Book. Once again, not the Jungle Book, but the Jangle Book, whole other thing. But the point is, that's what I love about Horace Mann. One, there's no one way to do it, and 2, people really do care about one another, and when you leave, you can always come back.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing. So I have a couple of questions that are, almost like the speed round, I would say, of questions. And, it may even make sense to sort of do a show of hands, but, the top number one question everyone is asking is, do you think you're going to see applicants on site? And the language we have used is, they're going to do their best, but we're still, as Jason told us, we're still in this. So I would just ask that everyone real quickly tell us where you are in your planning for that right now. If it feels too soon to know, but I would expect you want. want prospective applicants to have a sense of that. So Kathy, let's start with you.
Sure, great. And I'm going to tie that into the question that I didn't answer in the first round. And that is that, yes, we will be offering the opportunity to come to campus for interviews. We'll also offer the opportunity to interview over Zoom, and we will have in-person open houses. One thing sort of that I would just love to dispel, I guess, about Spence is that here we are, an all-girls school on the Upper East Side. Is it uptight, similar to Judy's description of that uptown, downtown feeling? There is a palpable sense of joy in our hallways at Spence. And so to that end, that's why we want you to come and see it. We really want you to come on campus and experience that joy, that sense of camaraderie amongst the students, and of course, also amongst students and faculty. So yes, on campus for sure. You know, unless something unforeseen happens.
Yep. Yep. I relate. All right, Sheila, what about you? What are your plans at this point?
I mean, yes. And right, like, yeah, I mean, the hope is to do that. I mean, we also, much like my colleagues on this call, we had some really great things come out of COVID in terms of accessibility for families to hop on a Zoom from wherever they are, and student info sessions and other things that, you know, normally if you were really interested in one of our schools, you would try to get to that school for every single event. And like, now you don't have to. And so we're definitely going to keep some of that Zoom stuff for those events. But yes, definitely trying to get people here for tours, interviews, and that's the plan. That's the goal, you know, unless a pandemic happens or something crazy like that. But yes, yeah.
Judy, what are your plans?
Same. In person is our plan for an open house, for tours, in-person tours, for interviews as well. We are going to be offering the opportunity for Zoom interviews if that's desired. For parent interviews, we do that for middle school and obviously for kindergarten. We are doing those exclusively on Zoom because we know that working parents, often it's more convenient. So yeah, it's all systems go, hopefully in person. If we have to switch it up, we will.
Yeah, okay. Carrie, what about you guys?
All of the above. You know, we're all in the same boat here. And, you know, we've found, as Sheila mentioned, you know, there were some silver linings to all of this craziness. And I think the accessibility was extraordinary. You know, there are a lot of open houses to visit, and it's really easy to do it from the comfort of your own home. It's also nice that you don't have to worry about childcare, transportation, et cetera. And then, as Judy just mentioned, for parent interviews and student interviews, we will have the option of in-person or via Zoom. We know when, you know, families are working, people are traveling. Sometimes for students, it's easier to do a student interview in the midst of the school day rather than losing a whole day. So we're trying to be as flexible as possible. We'll have an in-person open house, and we'll also do virtual events as well. So everything, and then see what happens.
Okay. Jenna, what's your plan?
I would say much the same. I think we do feel like we want consistency across the experience for our applicants. So I don't know that we'll give options per se, but I think we will do kind of a hybrid approach to the process. And we do incorporate group interviews for 6th grade and 9th grade at Riverdale. And so that's something in particular that we're giving some thought to as to the best mode to do that. But I think all of our schools want to open themselves up to all of you folks and to our own current families. And I think we will do the best we possibly can to give you a sense of our schools. And I think the good news for you all applying now is that we've gotten pretty good at doing virtual things and sharing the school that way. And we were clueless when we started this in fall 2020. And I think we've all come a long way since then. And we've kind of figured out, we've gotten the cobwebs out, so to speak, and kind of know what we're doing a little bit. So hopefully that's reassuring to those of you who are starting the process now.
Yep. Tyler, what about you?
More of the same. I echo my colleagues. We are planning to invite families to join us and students to join us on campus for experiences on campus. And we're also going to be preserving some of the elements we've created over the course of this online moment we've all experienced over the last 2 years. I would also, just to share with families as you approach this process, I think there's so much value that comes in being able to be on a school's campus and to walk around and see the kids and experience it in that way. And I think there also is a lot of value to interact with folks in the community in a virtual online setting. And I think that taking advantage of both of those opportunities, if we're able to provide both, I think is something just to keep in mind. The accessibility, not unlike Sheila, where we are located, sometimes it's easier to jump on something like this for a shorter experience rather than spend more time on the road or on a train coming up to where we are. So I encourage families to keep in mind all of the different offerings that we all might be offering.
Okay. And Jason, what's your plan?
Sure. Like most people, we're going to do something hybrid. You know, on one hand, Tyler talked about hopping on the road, hopping on the train. It's not hard to get here. It's very funny. We typically, in the before times when we were doing everything, we would always have to have somebody here early in the morning. Why? Because inevitably someone would think it would take forever to get here. It would take them 2 seconds and they were here. So we'd always have to have someone. But that said, we also want to think about equity. You know, when this all began, as Jenna said, we were all trying to figure out how this was going to work. We'll be able to do this. And one of our biggest fears is, well, what happens if people don't have access to the technology? Well, over the last 2 years, it turns out most people have access or can get access to the technology to make this work. And so equity means something else. It does mean, hey, that family that might not be able to take off the work for all the different events that we run. So we're going to have a mix of both Zoom, virtual, and in-person events. As Jenna said, we've all gotten this down to a science now. We know what we're doing on Zoom. And I think in some way, shape, or fashion, starting in the winter, maybe through the spring, we've been practicing about how to do this in person again, because we haven't done this in person in a while. So, you know, we got a chance to have families on campus that were admitted to the school. And then last year, we had to wait till families were enrolled in the school before they could even visit. So, and then we're doing a couple of individual tours for some families who couldn't make those tours. So we're making it happen. I think all of our schools are going to do everything we can to make this experience not only informative, but fun as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. I want to dovetail off of the comment about access and equity in the hybridized sort of admissions world, and talk about testing. And maybe let's do a show of hands first, because that's something that, you know, in some respects, it's been an ongoing conversation for a very long time, but the pandemic sort of forced the conversation to the forefront. So can we, why don't we start with who is requiring standardized testing for the next cycle, and just raise your hand. Okay, so that's consistent. And so Tyler, am I correct? You're optional?
That is correct.
And Sheila, am I correct in that you don't want to see him?
We were optional this year, and I believe we're going to stick to optional.
You're going to stick to optional. Okay, so why don't I ask you to explain that a little bit and that position?
Yeah, I mean, the first year when COVID first started, we felt like the testing organizations just didn't get their stuff together quick enough to do a valid test. So we were completely test blind. Moving into this second cycle of COVID admissions, we just felt like the conversations in our admissions committee meetings felt so much richer, not having the immediate test scores that everyone would flip to on their screen to see what the kid got immediately, and then decide if they wanted to go deeper into it, which we didn't have that. So it was really nice to just like dive a little deeper and talk about these kids in a different way. And to be honest, we did like a pretty deep dive afterwards. The kids that did submit test scores to us, I went back in and looked at their IC and SSAT scores for the kids that enrolled. They're exactly what we expected them to be. So it didn't feel like, oh my God, I can't believe we made this awful decision. Like that just didn't happen. And then on top of that, we did our own internal deep dive with, I think we did 5 years of data of kids that had enrolled, what their SAT or ACT score ended up being, which college they matriculated to, and what their GPA was. And there really was no correlation. So, you know, there were some kids that, like, honestly, if we had really just only focused on test scores, there's a kid that maybe had a 4 in one section of the IC, happened to be a sibling, or had other factors that we, you know, looked past because of that. Kid aced SATs, like went on with, like, one of the top students, full scholarship to a great college. Like, it felt like going optional seems like, for the people that really did well and really feel like they want to send you the test, that's great. But we also had our own, sorry, I'm taking up too much airtime here. Sorry, friends. We also had our own writing assessment that they had to do, which was timed right after the interview. So it sort of mimicked what they would have on the test, which is what we felt like we would have been missing if we didn't get any testing.
Right. And that makes a lot of sense. Jenna, I'm going to ask you to speak to the other perspective, because we've had a very in-depth conversation about this and how, you know, the position that it feels like it provides for greater access when you.
Sure. I'm happy to speak to it. And I think these are all conversations that we're constantly having. And I think this is something that we do in our school all the time. We encourage our students to do, but we as admission teams are constantly thinking about this. And I will say that I am a firm believer that the admissions process is not just about sort of gathering the kids who are going to be joining the community and pushing them through the door and on they go. I feel very strongly that we're also thinking about how we can prepare our colleagues who are going to be working with the new students to understand who they are as learners and who they are as people. And so I feel very strongly that it's our obligation to have as much information as we can to share with our colleagues on the academic side and in the community to know about these folks. All that being said, there are a lot of different pieces in the application process, and we really see the test scores as one data point. I don't think they're the be all and end all, and we will never make an admission decision purely based on scores. And I know that's the case for all of my colleagues here because I know them well and I know the integrity they bring to their processes. So, you know, I think that's important to note. As Sheila just mentioned, I think the writing component of a student's application, particularly for middle and upper school, is important. And for us, we do like that sort of unedited writing sample that comes with the IC or the SSAT. So that's something that we appreciate. I think many of us have been doing this for a very long time, but I think sometimes we don't know all of the schools that kids are coming from. And so sometimes it can give us a little bit more information about a student and their background. Lastly, I'll just say quickly, I look for reasons for kids to excel in the admissions process. And, you know, you may have a lower grade in a particular area, but you may really shine in that testing. And so we're looking for that moment of strength in your application rather than reasons to not admit you. And so I feel like it just provides us a lot more information as part of the process. I don't think there's a right or wrong on this. I firmly understand the issues of access and preparation for these tests. And so that's why it'll never be the be all and end all, but we look at it as another data point in a complex process. So I hope that helps. I hope that represents some of my colleagues' views, but please jump in if there's anything else you all have to share about that.
Jason, did you want to add anything?
So no, I think
okay.
my colleagues hit it perfectly. At the end of the day, to be perfectly honest, and I would love to say this is true just of Horace Mann, but I doubt it. I think it's true probably of a number of different schools. The test is very rarely the first thing we look at. I'll be honest. It's typically the third or the fourth thing we look at. We're firstly looking at, just Horace Mann as an example, we're looking at the interview and the student's grades first. At the end of the day, if we wanted to look just at the test, it'd be very easy for us to turn into Stuyvesant, Bronx Science, Brooklyn Tech, you know, the test, but we've never been that. We weren't that. before COVID. We're not going to be that after COVID. So I think that's something that's very, very important. As Jenna said, it's a data point that helps us sort of get information. But as Sheila said too, no, students grow, they evolve. And the hope is that our schools through time are going to add strength to your students in so many ways, not just testing and not just about outcomes, but just in general. Yeah,
that's a really good point. And I mean, these children are not fully baked yet. So, you know, they have a ways to go. This is an important conversation piece. A lot of the schools changed language after the protests in June of 2020 and all the social media channels that pop, well, not channels, but feeds that popped up, you know, Black at a certain independent school name, and incorporated language in a much more direct way to the admissions process about expectations, well, not expectations, but just, you know, surrounding DEIB. And I would like if everyone can give me, and I know it's hard to be quick because it's not a quick conversation, but, you know, it's perhaps one conversation with a sixth grader and a different, or a prospective sixth grader, and a different conversation with prospective ninth grader. But maybe we should talk more about the expectations around that conversation with the applicants than parents at this point, because I think, you know, we're helping them begin to spread their wings and find their language. So I'm going to ask Carrie to start. What, you know, tell us a little bit about what you have found has worked for you.
Actually, Adriana, I need you to clarify a bit because it is a really it's a complex situation and I'm not quite sure what you want.
So what I want is just to talk about the institutional expectation in some respects, like the school. I mean, this goes into who's a good fit. It's not that there's a certain point of view, but when we're talking about issues around belonging, diversity, equity, inclusion, and you have these middle schoolers trying to find their words around this. I guess that is it, you know, the expectation is that there will be some openness to growth and conversation at all of your schools, but just a little bit about how that looks school to school.
So specifically about DEIB work at each school? Okay. Yes. Sorry. It's, you know, I think for all of us, we're finding that this is an ever growing challenge for all of us to face. And I don't think that anybody has one perfect answer. I don't think there's one book, there's not one speaker, there's not one conference. And I think, you know, as something pops up, we need to be as responsive as possible, and recognizing that the conversations that you're having with sixth graders are quite different than conversations you're having with ninth graders or with 11th graders. For us as a school, we have gone to a model where we do not have one director of DEI. We have actually flipped the acronym a bit. We've gone with JEDI, which is Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. Mm-hmm. But what we really wanted to focus on was that this was not one person's job, that it really is all of ours. So we do have a council of about 20 members who are really working throughout the community to look at how are we speaking with our faculty and our staff? How are we speaking with our families? How are we speaking with our alumni? And again, this is a conversation that is ongoing. I don't think there is one perfect answer, but it is something that we want to make sure that we are always addressing, readdressing, and reevaluating.
Okay, that's helpful.
So if I could jump in, Adriana, in terms of relating our importance around inclusion and belonging within the interview with students, we talk about or work our way into the question around, you know, what's important to you? What parts of your identity are important for us to know about, so that we can really enhance that sense of belonging? What are the ways in which you would like to grow as a student in our community? So that there is this, you know, I think the idea that's imparted is that this is a partnership And we want to build a strong community, and that rests on you developing as a person and our community also welcoming you as, you know, who you are and for who you will become.
Yeah, it's so important in adolescence to feel, you know, valued and
You feel
when you walk through the door of school. Yeah. So Judy, can you tell us a little bit about Dalton's approach?
Sure. This has been something that is just very important to us. We have started working on this for a couple of decades already. What we have found is that, you know, yes, we certainly can attract and reinforce the values that we feel about DEIB work. We're very clear about it in our mission. If, you know, parents want to look at a school, they should look at the mission statement of each school and read them carefully and realize that this is what they're getting into. If this is not right for your family, there are other schools, there are other options. K through 12, we have about 52% of our students who identify as students of color. It is certainly, you know, Jason, all of our schools have, you know, a great percentage of our students, you know, as identifying as students of color, families identifying as students of color, but also in many other ways of diversity. What we are finding is that it is not just about having families feel included, but it is about how are we going to support the students while they are in that phase of trying to figure out who they are, who are the people around them, and how they are interacting with them, themselves, and the world. So that's the hard part. So I will say that I can speak for us. We obviously are a very visibly diverse, but also invisibly diverse school. I mean, family dynamic, religion, political affiliation, all of that. But the real sort of in the weeds work is how do we support the students and those families when they're in our school with everyone.
Thanks, Judy. That's really helpful. I want to, Tyler and Jason and Jenna, I definitely want to hear from you. And you know, I think that I know there are questions people want to ask, but this has really changed in the admissions landscape. And I think it's very important that we give it a minute and hear from everybody about it. So, so Tyler, why don't you talk to us about Fieldston?
Sure. I mean, I don't really feel, in my experience, that this has been a change in really the admissions landscape. I think it's been a change in a lot of adults' experiences. Yeah. And especially for adults that haven't had to consider these types of issues and really consider what other people's lived experiences are. And so I see that as a really dynamic change. In my experience at my school at Fieldston, you know, our school has been practicing this type of work for quite a long time, to Judy's point, decades, and students in our lower divisions have been engaged in conversations around race and equity for many, many years. And so they've developed a vernacular with guidance and support from educators, teachers, our DEI department, in a way that has built a certain level of vocabulary and competency. You know, we are a school that I like to say tries to walk the walk, and sometimes that means that we trip. And I think that we own those trips and that we acknowledge them and don't shrug them off when we, you know, we laugh about them, we mourn them, we acknowledge them. And I think that that's a really important part of our community. And our students have been given a vocabulary to find agency in our school, which I think is really unique, that they are able to really challenge each other and challenge the adults in the community as well around these issues in a way that is really meaningful. We were, you know, this was maybe 5 years ago now, we had a movement started our school called Students of Color Matter, in which upper school students staged a demonstration and took over a building at our school. And it wasn't just a demonstration of taking over a building at our school. It was a conversation that they started that continues to this day. I've worked in college admissions, I've worked in college settings, and I'd never seen students, young people, organize in a way with a level of intensity and purpose that I had seen during that week on our campus. Students were running workshops for their peers, for faculty, for other adults in the community. They were conducting conversations that I wish I could have filmed with my eyes, because I think as we look at and approach and understand more and more each and every day, the world that we're sending young people out to navigate at this current moment, I think being able to lean into difficult conversations, being able to have uncomfortable truths presented to you, and being able to bring those people along with you as friends, as colleagues, is super important. So I don't see it so much as a change in the admissions landscape. I think the adults and communities are listening more. And I truly find that a lot of times students and young people, even if they've never been exposed to DEIB work in a way that we are exposing our students to at my institution, at other institutions that are represented here, I feel like they have a greater sense of ownership over some of that vocabulary than the adults. One of the things we focus on too with adults in our community, if you're new to our community, you're going to be taking and required to be involved in anti-bias training. You're going to be part of the conversations that understanding what students are exposed to in the classroom, because they're going to be coming home to your dinner table. So I think that's super important. I know I took up a lot of space there. So.
No, but that's really helpful to know, because that is directly woven into an expectation, for a prospective family. They should know this is coming home to dinner table conversation. It's not siloed in school. Sheila, I wanted to hear from you, and then we'll do Jason and Jenna. And I wanted to, hopefully we leave a couple minutes for some questions at the end.
So I promise you, I'm not taking up a lot of space here. Basically what my colleagues are saying, same thing happens at Packer, especially what Tyler just ended with the expectation that families are engaging in this work. We also have a requirement for that. But probably my favorite thing that came out of all of this is that our students, not that they didn't have a lot of voice before, but they've formed what's called the Change Committee. And they literally invited faculty and staff and administrators to the meetings the first summer of COVID. And they were like, here are our expectations. And they were respectful, but it was like, this is what we want done. And some of it was like short term, let's change some of these books in English class. Let's make sure we're focused on some mathematicians that are people of color, like little things that easily could be changed. And some of them were long term. And part of the long term piece was working with our communications department to make sure that kids are represented equally, and that it's not like we're asking the same kids of color over and over to be on the website or whatever. And so our website is actually changing so that there's more student voice, which I think is really cool. So I will end with that. Thank you.
That's great to hear. Jason, tell us a little bit about Horace Mann.
Sure. It's impossible to turn on the news or just look around you and not realize, as a country, we're dealing with a reckoning on race. We're dealing with a reckoning on how people are just, let's be frank, trying to control the bodies of women. We're dealing with systemic racism, police brutality, anti-Asian violence, and you can only look or just look to what just happened this past weekend in Buffalo, where my brother is actually a prosecutor. And ultimately speaking, I got a text asking me, is your brother okay? That said, as hard and as difficult as these issues are to talk about, as I think about a good friend of mine who talked about being afraid to go into her synagogue. We talk about all of these issues with our students at age appropriate points along the way. And so, and I know we're not the only ones who use this service, whether you're talking about Pollyanna, nursery through 8, diversity resource curriculum, whether you're talking about the work at Horace Mann, we folded into our ruler program for social emotional intelligence, the anti-bias training we do, the series on race that we do in our upper division, our STEPS program, which mentors students of color, or whether you talk about our Lions Talks, or mission-specific spaces for Black and Latinx families that we have in the process, or specific questions we have around DEIB work in the admissions process. We're doing our best. We're doing our best. And I tell you what, and each of my colleagues have pretty much echoed this, and Tyler, I think, said it. The work is messy. We're not going to get it right 100% of the time, but we're going to have the conversations. And I tell you what, anybody that tells you to get it right 100% of the time, run away.
Yeah.
Because whether you've been doing it for 5 years or like most of us, whether you've been doing it for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, or it was part of the outset of your school's founding, it's messy and it's hard, but the conversations are often sometimes very beautiful as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want you to always think that it's always about the heavy.
Yeah.
So many more times than not, it's a celebration about what makes us all so amazing and what adds to our communities. And so whether you're talking about our LGBTQ plus reception that we have, or our fall family gathering we have to celebrate different families, all of our schools are doing our best.
Mm-hmm. That is a great way to sum it up, Jason. Jenna, I feel badly just asking you to squeeze this in, and I also want to add to all of our panelists, Tyler smartly put in, you have an event coming up and you put that in the chat. If anybody has any admissions events, that feel free to add that to the chat. But Jenna, why don't you tell us about Riverdale's approach and the character piece?
I can't cut and paste my events at the same time, but
okay,
I will. I'll get to that afterwards. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of what my colleagues have shared, it's quite similar at Riverdale. I'll just take a slightly different angle, but I think what my colleagues have said is that we see our schools as preparation for life. Life is going to continue to look different for our students and their families than it did when we all came out of school. And I think, and yet, like I look back to at Riverdale back in 2020, we actually had just finished this statement on campus discourse, which we developed after our students attended a college level conference on campus discourse. And one of the quotes that we have in the front of this booklet that we share widely with our middle and upper school students and families is from our founder. And it says, "Try far harder to catch the other person's point of view and to draw it out rather than repress it." And so that's a perspective that I think, we've been trying to share at our schools, all of them since they were founded. And this is a lengthy booklet that I certainly will not read all of it to you in the next 4 minutes, but I will say that one of the things that really resonates in there is the idea of trust, care, and curiosity. And I think to kind of sum up some of what my colleagues have been saying tonight is we want to develop partnerships with applicant families so that we can have trust for one another, understanding that we're all working towards similar goals of helping to make positive change in the future. That also requires curiosity. And I think that's not just sort of the intellectual curiosity and wanting to make your own achievements in the world, but it's also curiosity about other people. And I think some of the best things that you and your students can do are to ask a lot of questions of yourselves, questions of the schools that you're considering, so that you can really understand the communities in which you're looking to put yourselves. And so I don't really have a whole lot to say, because I think my colleagues have said all of it beautifully, but I do think you can be nervous as you go into this process that you're going to say the wrong thing or that you're going to ask the wrong question. And I think if you understand that we're approaching it with forgiveness and with understanding that your intentions are good, we ask that you do the same of us and our schools and know that we're all in this learning endeavor together. And I think that will help you find the community where you would like your student to pursue their next bit of their next journey or the next step in their journey, I guess I'll say. So I hope that answers the question and still gives us time to wrap up.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important just to remember a lot of times we'll hear language about, my goal is for my child to be a lifelong learner. Okay, lifelong learners ask questions, and so we don't encourage lifelong learners to think they have it all figured out when they're 12, 13, 14. So I think that was a really nice way to mesh that together. I had a question directed at me just about, which we don't have time to go into this, but about different curricular approaches. My advice, and I guess we can thumbs up it if that works, is just you all have a version of a curriculum matrix on your website that's accessible, correct? Yeah. So my recommendation is that anybody who really wants to understand it, sort of the granularity, just go in and have some fun with it. Dig into that curriculum matrix, because that will tell you a lot about the schools. And it is 8 o'clock on the dot. I'm very grateful to you wonderful panelists for joining us tonight. Thank you to everyone who registered. If you do have any follow-up questions for a panelist or for Smart City Kids, you feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to give you more information, and we have recorded the session. So if anybody wants to watch that, we're happy to provide that link as well. Thank you all so much. It's so good to see everyone's faces. It does feel like it's been a while. And have a lovely evening all. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us, Adriana.
Thanks, everybody.
Everyone.
Thank you for attending, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great one.
Bye-bye now.
Thank you all. Thank you.